Chapter 3, The Runaways. If you remember, there had been a package that got lost. It fell behind at the doll maker shop, and it got sent to the Palmers, even though it was 100 years later. And Annabelle figured out that inside that box was supposed to be, or was her little sister, or what should have been her little sister. And instead they got baby Betsy. Nobody wanted to open the package because the Palmers were on vacation and because they could not undo all of that. And then Tiffany and Annabelle did open it up, and it was her little sister. They called her Tilly May, Matilda May. And Annabelle decided she was going to run away because she was not going to let her little sister get sent back. And Tiffany said she was going to run away with her. Chapter 3, The Runaways. But before we go, said Tiffany, we ought to seal the package up so that it looks the same as it did when the Palmers last saw it. Tilly's so light, they'll never know the package is empty. Unless they open it, replied Annabelle grimly. That's good thinking, though, she added, and she and Tiffany closed the end of the box, patted the paper back in place, and sealed it with the tape. How does it look? Asked Annabelle. Tiffany surveyed their work. That means she looked it over. Great, she said. We could become thieves. Not a good choice. All right, let's get going. Uh-oh, cried Annabelle. How are we going to get out of the house? We can't open any of the doors. How would we turn the knobs? We'll find a door we can pull open from the bottom, said Tiffany, like the attic door. Tiffany and Annabelle had spent a good deal of time in the attic of the Palmers' house. They had had many adventures up there, including finding Auntie Sarah after she had been lost for 45 years. And their journeys always began by wriggling their hands under the crack beneath the door to the attic stairs, which didn't latch properly, and swinging it open. All right, said Annabelle, and the dolls set off. Traveling with Tilly May turned out to be rather difficult. For one thing, she was smaller than Annabelle and Tiffany, so her legs were shorter, which meant that she couldn't move as fast as they could. For another, she stopped every few inches to ask a question. What's that? She said as they passed a chair leg. What's that? She asked as they passed a boot. What's that? She said as they passed a cat toy, an umbrella, a sneaker, a backpack, a baseball bat, a dish, a doormat. Annabelle tried to answer each question patiently, but some things were hard to explain. For instance, that's a cat toy, she said. Here's a picture, and all of those fingers represent all of the questions Tilly would ask. She'd point her finger and say, what's that? What's a cat toy? Tilly wanted to know. Well, a toy is something you play with, said Annabelle. Oh, what's a cat? Should we show her the captain? Asked Tiffany. No! Shrieked Annabelle. Anyway, here's the front door, but there's no crack under it, and it's closed tight. Back door, then, said Tiffany. What's that? Asked Tilly May, pointing into a corner. It's a dust bunny, replied Annabelle. What's a dust bunny? A bunny is a kind of animal, said Annabelle, but a dust bunny, well, it's a collection of hair and dust. What's an animal? Asked Tilly. What's a collection? Annabelle was exhausted. Okay, here's the back door, said Tiffany. No crack under it either. So far, running away was not going well. I know, said Annabelle suddenly. The captain's door. We can go out the cat door. It's close to the ground and you can push through it. I've seen the captain do that lots of times, and we won't have to worry about the captain since he's closed in the kitchen. Oh, brilliant, cried Tiffany. Annabelle, you're a genius. Annabelle was pleased with herself, although she didn't particularly feel like a genius. How many more minutes? Asked Tilly suddenly. How many more minutes until what? Replied Tiffany. And Annabelle said, how do you know what minutes are, Tilly? In fact, how do you know anything? From listening, said Tilly. Listening to what? Asked Annabelle. The thing called the radio. The radio? Was there a radio in the doll maker's shop? Somewhere it was, said Tilly. I could hear it all the times. Well, not all the times, but lots and lots and lots of times. She's been listening to the radio for years and years, exclaimed Annabelle softly to Tiffany. That explains a few things. The dolls were running through the Palmer's hallway toward the back of the house. Tilly asked again, how many more minutes? Until what? Asked Tiffany, sounding exasperated. Until we get to that cat door thing. I don't know why. Tilly stopped and looked down at her legs, then asked, are we running? Annabelle stopped too. Tiffany, she said, Tilly's been cooped up in that box since the end of the 19th century. She's probably never had so much exercise. You'd think she'd be glad to be running around. Yes, but her legs aren't used to it. She's actually kind of like a newborn baby, except that she can talk. Annabelle turned to her sister. Tilly, do you need to rest? My legs want to hold still. Annabelle and Tiffany sat on the hallway rug with Tilly May, who kept losing her balance and toppling over. At last, Tiffany said, listen, I hear the clock. Let's count the chimes and see what time it is. I really think we should get going, Annabelle. I can count, announced Tilly May, sitting up again. 10, she said. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. You're counting backwards, said Tiffany. 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! That's great, Tilly, said Annabelle, and she put her arm around her sister. Here's what they looked like while they were resting. Tiffany cocked her head, listening. It's 9 o'clock already. Tilly, do you think you can walk some more? Asked Annabelle. It's only a little farther to the cat door. Tilly fell over again, then stood up. All right, let's go. The captain's door was at the side of the house and consisted of a hinged flap that swung back and forth from the top of a small rectangular opening. The opening, which Mrs. Palmer worried about, what if a raccoon gets into the house, or a squirrel or a possum, was just big enough for the captain and plenty big enough for the dolls. When they reached it, Annabelle gave a tentative push and saw a flash of sunlight on the other side of the door. It works, she said to Tiffany, and suddenly she felt very nervous. She had never voluntarily left the safety of the human's house. She and Tiffany had been out of doors. They had had one memorable adventure in which they had accidentally gone to school in Kate's backpack, and then to a boy's house where they had met Mimi, but they hadn't left on purpose. And now that's exactly what they were about to do. Annabelle pushed the door open and looked out into the sunlight again. Then she drew her head back inside and said to Tiffany, I know running away was my idea, but do you think we should really do it? Oh, Annabelle, I have a good idea what's going to happen when everybody figures out that we're run away. How will they figure out that we've run away? Like this, said Annabelle. You see, tried to combine too many words together. You see, Auntie Sarah understands me better than anyone does. Except you, she added loyally. She knows I was mad, and I think she believes that Tilly May really is the missing baby. At least she understands that I believe she's the missing baby. So when we don't come back, I'm pretty sure she'll decide we ran away with Tilly. And then Mama and Papa will get upset, and Auntie Sarah will defend me. And Mama and Papa will say that Auntie Sarah always defends me. And then eventually all the grown-ups will be mad at Auntie Sarah, except for Uncle Doll. He'll just sulk, and soon their whole vacation will be ruined. I wish my parents could be a little more relaxed, Annabelle continued, like your parents. When your parents realize you're gone, they'll miss you and everything, but they won't get upset. They'll just hope you have a good adventure, won't they? At first, said Tiffany. But if we're gone for a really long time, they'll get worried too. Annabelle sighed. Then she poked her head through the cat door a third time. When she did, sorry, she found herself face to face with a grasshopper. Ah! Shrieked Annabelle and ducked back inside. What? What? Asked Tiffany. A giant green grasshopper, I think. This might be a bad. Annabelle suddenly stopped speaking. Tiffany, where's Tilly May? Annabelle and Tiffany looked around the hallway. No Tilly. Then Tiffany cocked her head. Listen, she said. Annabelle listened intently. From beyond the cat door came the sound of laughter. Annabelle poked her head outside. Tilly was sitting in the sunshine, a tiny, tiny doll among tall blades of grass, like a rabbit in a forest. Behind her was the Palmer's driveway, which until this moment Annabelle had glimpsed only from Kate's window. To her left, the trees reaching so high into the sky that Annabelle had to lean over backwards to see the tops of them. The grasshopper had disappeared, but perched on the toe of one of Tilly's shoes was a shiny red and black ladybug, and it was the ladybug that was making Tilly laugh. Annabelle, said Tilly, this is the best box I've ever been in. She pointed to the ladybug. What's that? She asked. It's a ladybug, said Annabelle. And what's that? A tree. What's that? A pebble. Annabelle regarded Tiffany, who had followed her through the cat door. All right, we have to leave, she said. Look how happy Tilly is. She deserves to see what's outside the box. Annabelle turned her face to the sun. She didn't know what was going to happen next. She didn't know where she and Tiffany and Tilly May were headed, or even in which direction they should set off. But we're going to leave, and leave right now, thought Annabelle resolutely. Come on, she said. She took her sister by one hand, and Tiffany took Tilly by the other, and they led her toward the driveway, where most of the Palmers' adventures began. Here's the picture of Tilly May in the grass with the ladybug on her foot. Chapter 4 is called A Daring Rescue. Whoops. We see a car and we see the driveway. I don't see the dolls, so we'll see what happens. Now what? Said Tiffany when the dolls were standing up the edge of the Palmer's driveway. Annabelle looked down the drive to the street. A car flew by. She looked behind the Palmer's house at the woods. She looked across the yard to the yellow house next door. The house belonged to Mrs. K. Robinson and her husband. Mrs. Robinson was responsible for feeding the captain while the Palmers are away. Earlier, she had let herself in the back door to give the captain his breakfast. Annabelle considered the bleeding hearts by the front door. Bleeding hearts are a kind of flower. You should look up what bleeding hearts look like. And the brick path leading to the stoop, but they didn't give her any ideas about running away. She looked across the driveway at the house belonging to the Myerses, the Palmers' next-door neighbors on the other side. There were the Myers boys, Jonah and William, with whom Kate and Nora claimed to hate. They didn't give Annabelle any ideas either. At last she turned to Tiffany. I guess, she said slowly, that we should start by running down the driveway to the sidewalk. In the daylight? Asked Tiffany. Don't you think we should stay out of sight? But we're so small and everything is so big, no one will notice us. Anyway, we'll be careful. Tiffany looked doubtful. Okay, she said finally. Stick to the edge, though, so we can duck into that grass if we have to. A row of peony bushes, another kind of flower that usually bloom in the springish, summerish time, lined one side of the driveway. Annabelle and Tiffany, with Tilly May between them, hurried along under the canopy of leaves until they reached the sidewalk. Now what? Said Tiffany again. Where are we going? Said Annabelle. Back to school? To Kate and Nora's school? Said Tiffany. What's a school? Said Tilly May, who had taken advantage of the pause to sit down on a peony petal. Annabelle thought for a moment. It's a big building where... What's a building? Interrupted Tilly May. Annabelle drew in a breath and let it out very slowly. Silently, she counted to 10. Tilly, she said, I know everything is new to you, and I know you're happy to be out of the box. Yes, agreed Tilly, but I can't answer all your questions. Not right now. Tiffany and I need to think. Could you store up your questions and ask them later? Hasn't Mrs. Widelick asked you guys that before? Like when I'm trying to teach a lesson and I'll say, oh, can you hold on to that question? That's what Annabelle's asking Tilly to do. What does store up mean? Annabelle pursed her lips, then said patiently, it means save. Please save your questions for a while. All right, said Tilly, and she busied herself making a peony petal hat. Why do you want to go to this school? Tiffany asked Annabelle. I don't know. I guess because we've been there before. Do you think the school is open? After all, it's summer vacation. Annabelle, voice trembling, said, oh, never mind. It was a silly idea. We won't even know how to get to the school. The last time we went, we traveled in Kate's backpack. We couldn't see where we were going. Now wait, don't get upset, said Tiffany. We'll think of something. Where do people go when they run away? Tiffany looked thoughtful. Well, Dorothy Gale wound up in Oz, and the Darlings wound up in Neverland. The Darlings didn't actually run away, though, Annabelle pointed out. Okay, you guys know, I don't know that I forget that Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz had a last name of Gale. But the Darlings in Neverland, in case you don't know, some of you do, and I'm sure that you've made connections. The Darlings were the children who were taken to Neverland in the story of Peter Pan. Anyway, those are all book characters, not real people or real doll people. I wonder where people go when they run away. You guys should also have a mental picture in your head that Annabelle and Tiffany and Tilly May are standing outside of a house. So take a look out your window and picture these dolls standing outside. Annabelle shook her head. I don't know. Maybe they don't know either. I mean, maybe they don't know when they start out. Maybe they just go. Then I think, said Tiffany, that we should go wherever our feet carry us. Annabelle stood up and turned in a circle, looking all around her. That was when she heard voices. Come on, called Jonah Myers. Hurry up, I want to have time to go swimming later. I am hurrying, replied his brother, but we have a ton of stuff to deliver today. Annabelle now saw that Jonah and William were dropping armloads of bundles into 2 red wagons parked outside their front door. She looked at Tiffany and put her finger to her lips, and then she and Tiffany each grabbed Tilly by an arm. They dove into the peony bushes. Did they see us? Whispered Annabelle. Tiffany shook her head. No. I wonder what they're doing. I know what they're doing. I heard Kate and Nora talking about it. Jonah and William started their own business this summer. Myers Flyers. Someone will call them and say, "We need 100 flyers to advertise our patio furniture sale." Jonah and William ask what the flyers should look like and what information to include, and then they create them on their computer and print them out. I guess today they're delivering the flyers they've made. Here is a picture of Tiffany and Annabelle peeking up from the leaves of the flowers. I'm not sure where Tilly May is, but you can see these two, and they're watching the two boys next door. Annabelle peered through the screen of peony leaves. "Tiffany," she said softly, "I have an idea. If we could get in one of the wagons, we could hitch a ride. Who knows where we might end up? Anywhere. It would be a real adventure." "Gosh," said Tiffany, "I don't know. We'll go a lot faster in the wagon than if we try to walk with Tilly." Are you guys thinking what I'm thinking? Remember when the Palmers would go away, the dolls were always cognizant. They always thought about whatever they did, they had to make sure it couldn't be undone. And they talked about that a lot in the Meanest Doll in the World, because anything that you do, if you can't undo it, that's a problem. It puts doll kind of in jeopardy. We're talking about two dolls who have never been out of the house, and now they're talking about going in a wagon and have no idea where they're going in this big, wide world. I don't know about you, but I'm scared for them. And I know we've got a lot of book left. I'm thinking they're going to go on lots of adventures. What do you think? The boys disappeared inside their house, and Annabelle suddenly burst out of the garden, pulling Tilly behind her. "Hurry!" she called to Tiffany. The dolls ran as fast as their tiny legs would move, Annabelle half dragging Tilly. They were standing just 3 feet from the wagons when the door opened again, and out came Jonah and William. "Garden!" said Tiffany in a frantic whisper, and she launched herself behind a bird bath in the Myers' flower bed. Annabelle scurried next to her, one hand clapped over Tilly's mouth, silently urging the boys to make another trip inside. "One last load," said William then, and Annabelle breathed a sigh of relief. When the door closed behind the boys, she ran for the nearer of the wagons, scrambled up one wheel, and fell over the edge into the packages. This is what the wagon looks like, and she would have scrambled up and over into the wagon. "Grab Tilly," said Tiffany, holding her aloft, which means up in the air, and Annabelle took her sister's hand and hauled her into the wagon. Tiffany tumbled in after them, and the dolls crawled between two teetering stacks of papers. Moments later, they felt the wagon start to move, jouncing across the lawn to the sidewalk. "Oh," said Tilly May, "I don't like this box." "I hope she doesn't get car sick," said Tiffany. Wagon sick." "Shh," said Annabelle, although she didn't really think the boys could hear them over the rattling and banging of the wagon wheels. They rumbled along for what seemed a very long time. Annabelle was tempted to stand up and peer over the edge. You guys have heard that word before. But she knew better than to risk being seen. At last the wagon jerked to a halt, and Annabelle heard one of the boys say, "First stop, Sweet Lisa's." Then a hand reached into the wagon and removed one of the bundles. "I have to find out where we are," said Tiffany when the boys had left. She stood on her tiptoes. "I see lots of buildings close together," she reported to Annabelle and Tilly, "and lots of people, all in a hurry, and cars and trucks. You know where I think we are, Annabelle?" Annabelle nodded. Downtown. It was a place she had only heard about. Jonah and William returned then and continued making their deliveries. Annabelle winced each time they removed a bundle from the wagon. Their hiding places were disappearing. The dolls were huddled in a back corner when a splash of water landed on Annabelle's head, then on her hand, and then on her shoe. "Oh no," she whispered. "It's raining." "I hope it doesn't thunder," replied Tiffany. "What's thunder?" asked Tilly. "Shh, never mind." "William, we better go home for a while," Jonah said to his brother. "We didn't bring an umbrella, and we don't want any of the flyers to get wet." "We don't have time," cried William. "Now it's really raining. Quick, into the woods. It'll be drier under the trees." The wagon jerked forward, then flew along so fast that Annabelle and Tiffany and Tilly were flung about as if they had accidentally been tossed in a washing machine, which Tiffany confessed later had actually happened to her once. When the wagon came to a sudden stop, the dolls were thrown forward into the bundles of paper. Tilly began to wail. "Hush," said Annabelle. "Tilly, you can't make any noise." She turned to Tiffany and whispered, "She has so much to learn." "At least it isn't a thunderstorm," said Tiffany. "Jonah!" William called, and the other wagons stopped rattling along. "Let's stay under this tree for a while. It's totally dry here." Annabelle dared to peep over the edge of the wagon. She stared about, then dropped back down to Tilly and Tiffany. "You won't believe it," she whispered. "You should see where we are. It's a magic forest. Nothing but trees and flowers." "I think it's just a regular forest," said Tiffany. "We're in the town park." "Well, it looks magic. It's all peaceful, with the rain dripping down here and there, and the trees. They're even bigger when you see them up close. They're forest giants. And listen to the sounds." The dolls sat still and listened. They could hear the pattering of rain on leaves and the chirping of crickets, a sound with which Annabelle and Tiffany had become familiar during their terrifying adventure at the boys' house. And lots of birds calling to one another. "Chickadee," said Tilly May. "Chickadee, dee, dee." She paused, then said, "Oh, a robin. And a catbird. That's a catbird." "Tilly, shh," said Annabelle. But then she whispered, "How do you know bird calls?" "From a tape thing." "Someone played a tape of bird calls," said Tiffany. "I think so. Birds around the world." "Hey, William," shouted Jonah. "Look what I found." Annabelle stiffened. For one horrifying moment, she expected a human hand to reach in and pluck her out of the wagon. But then Jonah said, "It's a snake skin, a whole snake skin. Let's go see if we can find the snake it came off of." When the crashing footsteps had faded away and the dolls had heard nothing but cricket chirps and bird calls for several minutes, Tiffany said, "Let's have a better look around. Climb up on the papers. You can use them like steps." Annabelle and Tilly followed Tiffany, and they rested their arms on the edge of the wagon and gazed at the woods. "Uh-oh," said Tilly May. "What's wrong?" asked Annabelle. "My bonnet. It fell off." Annabelle looked at the ground below and saw the tiny white bonnet lying by the wagon wheel. "Let it go," said Tiffany. "No!" Tilly glared at Tiffany. "I like my bonnet," she said fiercely. Okay, we'll get it for you. Come help me, Annabelle. It will be quicker that way. You stay here, Tilly." This just seems to be going from bad to worse, in my opinion. Annabelle and Tiffany scrambled out of the wagon, and Annabelle reached for the bonnet. I told you we wouldn't find the snake." Tiffany jumped. Annabelle let out a tiny shriek. "The boys are back!" squeaked Tiffany. "Quick, hide!" But before the dolls could find a hiding spot, the wagon started to roll away through the woods. Annabelle stared at them in horror, searching desperately for a glimpse of her sister. It already stopped raining, she heard William say, his voice trailing off among the trees. We can go back to town now. After them, shouted Tiffany. Annabelle ran and ran, pounding along behind Tiffany, who was both faster and sturdier than she was. But after only a minute, Tiffany slowed down and then stopped. She turned to Annabelle. We can't catch them, she said. You've never given up before, replied Annabelle in surprise. Never. I'm not giving up, said Tiffany, but look. She indicated the wagons, which were now so far away the dolls could barely hear them. Annabelle slumped to the ground, not caring that she'd landed in a patch of very damp grass. This is my fault, she whispered. All my fault. Well, said Tiffany, no, don't try to make me feel better. There's nothing you can say. I was the one who wanted to run away. I was the one who disobeyed my parents. I was the one who thought we could take care of Tilly. Now everything is ruined. Annabelle put her head in her hands. So you're just going to sit there and feel sorry for yourself? Asked Tiffany. Annabelle glanced up at her friend. No, I guess not. Because I really don't see what good that's going to do. Annabelle squared her shoulders. You're right, she said. You can see them down here at the bottom. We have to do something. It's just that... What? Asked Tiffany. I don't know what it is we should do. For one thing, said Tiffany, we need to think clearly. Remember Selp? Selp! Exclaimed Annabelle. Of course! When Auntie Sarah had been missing, which now seemed like ages and ages ago, Annabelle and Tiffany had formed SUMP, the Society for Exploration and the Location of Missing Persons. If they were going to be good explorers, Tiffany had reasoned, then they needed to form an official organization dedicated to exploring in general and to finding missing doll people in particular. They hadn't had much use for SUMP after they had located Auntie Sarah, but now Annabelle saw that it was exactly what they needed. Okay, said Annabelle, we will think clearly and make a plan. There are lots of things we need to do, but the most important one is to find Tilly. After that, we need to get home again, and then we'll need to figure out what to do with Tilly. Do you think they picked up the bonnet or not? What do you think? Keep that in mind. I don't know. But first things first, said Tiffany, quoting Auntie Sarah. Right. First things first, Annabelle pointed to the ground. We can follow the tracks. And so Annabelle Doll and Tiffany Funcraft set out after the wagons, trotting beside the ruts the wheels had made in the damp earth. It was really rather exciting, Annabelle realized. Here she was, outdoors, among actual living trees and flowers and insects, things that so far she knew only from books or from seeing them on the Palmers' television. Grass was soft, Annabelle discovered, so were flower petals. The tree bark was rough, and sunshine was very bright when you were actually standing in it. Annabelle became so engrossed in these thoughts that at first she didn't notice the three small figures that disappeared in the distance. Annabelle? Said Tiffany, and then, Annabelle, look! Annabelle pulled her thoughts away from flower petals and sunshine. What? Where? There! Tiffany pointed ahead to a spot where the wagon tracks were lost from sight behind a jagged rock. Annabelle squinted her eyes. Hurrying toward her down the tracks was Tilly May. And she was hand in hand with Bobby and Bailey. Do you remember at the beginning of this story Bobby and Bailey were planning something and the girls didn't know what it was. How did Bobby and Bailey end up in the woods? And they have Tilly. And they all need to get back home. Stay tuned.